This month's e-magazine's a little bit different. We're starting off here in my tackle room, preparing for a decent match that I've got coming up Sunday on the Bristol Avon. It's a Preston Innovation Feeder Masters. It's a qualifying match, and the final is on a venue that I know quite well, Bow Beach, and I've actually done a DVD there, and I believe I'm still the record holder, so it is a venue that I would like to get to the final on. The Bristol Avon, fantastic venue. I've had a lot of success there in the past as a team, and I've done well there individually. It's on a bit called Crane and Fries, which is slightly downstream from the bit that I normally fish, but again, there's a massive head of bream, chub, skimmers, and even some decent eels and roach to be caught, with an odd barbel and an odd carp thrown in. I don't expect the fishing to be fantastic. However, the Bristol Avon is a little bit unpredictable. If you get a little bit of rain or a little bit of cloud cover, especially on the Crane, there's a massive head of bream and big weights could be expected. It really is one of those. You might need £10 to win the match, you might need 100. So like I say, the cameras will be joining me on Sunday for the match there. Obviously, like you know, preparation is key for me. I need to prepare, I need to make sure I've got the bait, the feeders, the rigs, the rods, everything absolutely perfect. Sunday is a little bit different. It is feeder only, the clue's in the name. There's more and more events coming like this, feeder only, big money to be won in the final, decent sized match. I believe there's about 70 people booked in already for Sunday's match. So not only is it a nice big match to go on a decent venue, but the carrot on the end, if you can do well and actually qualify, is obviously massive with a 2-day final at Bow Beach late September. So like I say, it's about preparation today, and I'm going to run you through the rods, the reels, the main line, the thinking behind them. I'm going to have a slightly heavier rod made up just in case I draw a barbel peg. There are odd carp along there. One bit in particular, Crane, it does get quite heavily carp fished, so again I'm going to take that into consideration with my ground bait choices, but bait's something that we'll look at a little bit later. What I really want to go through is how I prepare and my thinking behind it, from the feeders, from the main line to the hooks that I'm going to prepare, right the way through to making sure I've got the right trolley with me, the right rod rest, everything. I'm going to cut my gear down a little bit because as we all know, on a lot of these rivers there are a few long walks. Like I say, that's Sunday's match. Saturday I've got the Division 1 National on the Trent, so a little bit of the tackle and a little bit of the preparation that I use for that will come in for Saturday's match as well, as far as the feeder side. But today here in the tackle room, I really am looking at preparing and getting everything right. So not only am I happy in my mind, but I know that I've got everything for every eventuality. Obviously it's a little bit simpler Sunday than most matches because it's purely feeder, but again, as you know, I want to get things right. I want to have it in my head that I'm absolutely perfectly prepared. I'm going to get a few of the bits out, the feeders, the hook lengths, the rods, the reels, and we're going to go through it all one by one and prepare a couple of rods. I want to make up a rod with slightly heavier line, a 13-foot tournament distance. Don't want it for the distance, I want it for the power. The Bristol Avon is a little bit unpredictable. It can come up quite quick if we do get some rainfall, and there is a little bit of rain forecast the weekend. And what I don't want to do is arrive on Sunday morning, draw a decent peg and not have the right rod if the river's up. If the river's low and normal, 11 and 12 foot rods are fine. I'll probably opt to fish with braid. For those of you that watched the e-mags and that I did on the Gloucester Canal, very similar. There can be very little flow this time of year on the Bristol Avon, and braid will just give me the added accuracy of emptying the feeder and also the added bonus of seeing the bites nice and early. Like I say, I will have a rod made up with just line on, because if you do get on some of the big fish on the Bristol Avon, the bream in particular, they can be in excess of £6 or £7, and braid can be a little bit harsh, especially when you're not casting that far. So as you can see already, there's quite a lot of thinking, not only into the rods and reels and hooks and hook length, but into the actual main line or braid choice. I'm going to give myself a little option, one of each, and a slightly heavier rod made up just to cover me if there is rainfall. I don't want to be messing around on the morning. I want to get the rod out of my bag, ready made up and ready to go. The cameras will be joining me on Sunday on the bank, so today is purely about preparation. What I want to talk about first is the rod choice, the reel choice and the mainline choice. You do need a little bit of a variation because these rivers can be unpredictable. My normal fishing, if I'm on a nice low clear river, not too much weeding close. In case I hook a big fish, I'm not going to use the real short rods in that case. The normal fishing will be an 11-foot tournament rod. This has got 010 pulse braid on. Again, it's a braid that I've used a lot. It's very reliable, very strong, very durable, which is what I'm obviously looking for. On a lot of these rivers, even the bream will fight quite hard, but if you're lucky enough to hook a decent perch, a chub or even an eel, these fish can be a bit hard to get in, especially if you're faced this time of year with a vast amount of weeding close. So you do need something that's quite strong. So like I say, we're not going to be chucking miles on Sunday. If the river's normal, low, quite clear, I'm going to start using the 11-foot tournament feeder rod, which again is quite soft, but again you'll see there's not going to be a lot of flow on it unless we have some rain. So 010 braid, I've got an 8-pound shock leader of Dava ST, and the actual feeder will be tied just in a loop. This is something I'll show you. I've got to prepare another rod with exactly the same setup, and this is something that I'll show you more in depth. Not a massive reel. A lot of the river's only 25-30 metres wide where we're actually going, so you're not going to be chucking miles. And more importantly, you're not going to be fishing with a massive feeder. If the river's up and chocolate, then it all changes. What I have got is 2 rods exactly the same, in case of any breakages, in case I want to put a maggot feeder on, especially through the crane. There is an odd chub, and if things aren't going to plan, a maggot feeder cast slightly further across could well produce. So I want 2 rods exactly the same. I've looked at the weather forecast, and it's meant to be a little bit overcast and a little bit of rain, but the way the weather's been lately, I think most of the rain will go straight into the ground and not really affect the river. However, I don't want to be caught out. The next rod up is a 13-foot professional, slightly stepped up. I've got 10-pound Dava ST mainline, direct, no braid. This is a rod that if it's carrying a little bit of water, or I've got to cast a little bit further, or if I'm lucky and I do draw a very good peg and I could catch a few fish, this is the rod that I'll probably use. It's got a 4000 TDR reel, again slightly stepped up from the 3000 TDX. 13-foot rod, exactly the same setup. The feed is going to be tied into a loop, a running loop of about 6-7 inches, and then just a little loop boom tied off of that. But again, that's something that I'll show you. At the moment, we're just concentrating on the different step-ups in rods. So like I say, that's a rod at 13 foot. I can take the section out and use it at 12. Still quite a soft tip. It's got the yellow mega tip, which is around 1.25 ounces. Can still chuck a decent sized feeder. Good thing is with the Bristol Avon, unless you get a lot of water on it, it tends not to pull that much and you don't get too much rubbish coming through. So you can still use decent rods. One tip that I will give you when you go to these rivers is try not to overgun things. A lot of people think Bristol Avon, I'm going there, 13-foot rod, massive feeders, big hooks. It's not really like that, even for the big fish. Yes, when you're on a pile and the river's up and coloured, you can catch like this. But just try and fine things down a little bit. Try and get some bites to begin with. Because like I've said, double figures could easily win the match on Sunday. Yes, you might need a big weight if a bit of colour or an end peg produces. But it wouldn't surprise me if a low double figures actually got you in the final. And that's what I'm looking to do. Like I say, I'm not going to go there and actually fish for £100 of bream. In my mind, if I'm on that weight of fish and I start off nice and sensible, I'll probably catch them anyway. Like I say, going on to the 4th rod, and this is really if there is some water on. It's a 13-foot tournament distance. Like I say, the distance part doesn't really come into it. We're not going to be casting far, but what this rod will enable me to do, if it is a foot or two on, I can fish a big feeder, 30, 40, 60, 80, 100 grams, and I can cast this quite easily. The difference is with this, what I'm going to do, and this is a rod that I haven't made up yet, so I'm going to actually make it up here now for you. I'm going to put 010 braid on with a 10-pound shock leader and show you how I actually tie the feeder into the loop. Like I say, on a lot of venues, commercials especially, the feeder has to be free running. Obviously on natural venues and the rules for this competition, the feeder doesn't have to be free running. So again, it's something that I'm going to look to use. Just tie the feeder into a loop, and it's a rig that is widely used but not a lot of people know. Like I say, I've got a cast-ism reel. Again, the rod and the reel is a little bit overgunned for the venue if it's normal, but you get a little bit of rain and the Bristol Avon's a completely different animal. it'll flow, it'll be chocolate, there'll be some big fish to be caught. And again, a little bit like when we fished at Old Berry Hill, when we're casting a long way, the right tackle for the right situation is a must. And when that river's carrying a bit of water and there's a bit of flow going through, you do need a longer rod, and that's where this one will come into it. So just a little recap. So I've got the two 11-foots with braid and a shock leader, again all with the feeder tied into the loop. I've got the 13-foot that can be used at 12 as well. It's a short section that I can take out. That's with 10-pound Dava ST direct. That's for if the river's normal and I draw a really good peg, or if the river's just carrying a little bit of water, I can still get away with that. And then for the one, if it is carrying water and I'm fishing for big fish and I need to up the size of the feeder, 2, 3, 4 ounces sometimes you need to hold when it's really going through on the Avon. So I've got the 13-foot tournament distance with the casters and reel. But that's the one that I'm going to make up now. But they're the 4 rods that I have with me, all set up, ready to go on Sunday morning. So here I am, I'm going to make up my 13-foot power rod. I'm going to use 010 braid as mainline with a 10-pound shock leader. That just gives me the added security when I'm casting. Bearing in mind, if I'm going to be using this rod, it's going to be with a decent sized feeder. 2, 3, 4 ounces if the river is up and going. So what I'm going to do is load it with 010 braid. And I am going to put, like I say, a 10-pound shock leader of Dava ST. This just gives me that added security when I'm casting those sort of weights of feeder. I've stripped down a little bit of the line that was previously on this just to use as backing. Obviously the braid's quite nice and thin, so it's not going to take up a lot of the spool. And what I do obviously want to do is to load the reel correctly. I don't want too much, don't want too little. The advantage you got on the Bristol Avon is obviously you're not casting a million miles. So what I'm going to do is just tie the braid straight onto the line. There's a multitude of knots. I just use a 3-turn loop knot. Nice and strong. Obviously it's hidden anyway, it's underneath everything. Just trim that off with a pair of braid scissors. Cuts through the line easy, but also cuts through the braid. Now one little tip I'm going to give you is when you start to put the braid on or any line, the first few turns I just put on myself. And what that enables me to do, you can see the knot there where the braid meets the line. And what I want to do is get this down and out the way. I don't want it in the middle of the spool sticking up. So what I do is just wrap it round and then I just manipulate the line so that I can put it right in against the spool, hidden. And then the next lot I'm going to put over the knot and flatten the knot against the line, against the spool. And what this cuts out is any kind of interference from that knot. Now that knot is absolutely flattened against the spool, nothing sticking up. And if I'm casting a long way or I'm casting a big feeder, the last thing I want is any interference. And you can see now that that knot is absolutely flattened, almost buried with the few wraps of braid that I've put over it. It's a very, very good tip because braid's very fine. Unless you're putting on an astronomical amount, you're not going to cover it properly if it is sticking up, and that can interfere. And there's nothing worse when you're trying to cast a decent sized feeder than getting interference. So just hold it all nice and tight. The back wind's on, the knot's buried, and then just start to put the braid on nice and slow, taking my time. You can see it's going on really nice. So fine, this 010 braid, but unbelievably strong. Just take my time. There's 150 metres on this spool. I'm going to put the lot on. But the beauty is with these reels, they've got such a powerful winding mechanism, such a strong reel, that when you're casting these big feeders, yeah, it might be a little bit overgunned. They're really made for the distance side of things, but they're a fantastic reel, powerful. And when you're using these big feeders, that's what you need. You can't use a normal 3000 reel when you're using big feeders. And you can see that's 150 metres straight on, perfectly loaded, just up to the lip of the spool. Again, I don't want to come up too high because the line, the braid or the line will just spill off. And there's nothing worse than getting entangles. So just up to the bottom of the lip of the reel, that's absolutely perfect. You probably saw then the actual winding power of the reel, how quick 150 metres actually went on to that. So what I'm going to do now, that's the braid on. I'm going to thread it through the eyes and then show you how I attach the shock leader, and even more importantly, tie the feeder into the loop. So I've threaded the rod up with the braid. Now I'm going to attach the shock leader. There's many different knots to use to attach your shock leader to your main line, or in this case the braid. For me, it's something that I've used really a lot and I've got a lot of confidence, and that's just the loop to loop. So what I'm going to do is tie a 3-turn loop in the braid. Just pull that nice and tight, very strong, and just trim that off around about 1.5 inches. I don't want the loops too small. I found with the loops being slightly bigger, it helps them pass through the rings a lot quicker and a lot more smoothly. Like I say, it's quite an aerodynamic knot. It's quite a long knot, but it's very aerodynamic, goes through the eyes very cleanly. So there you go, there's the first loop. I'm just going to put that down. The shock leader I'm going to use is 10 ST. So again, it's a case of tying the loop. I want it a similar sort of size, around about 1.5 inches. Just wet it, pull it nice and tight. Trim it off really flush. There we go. So that's the starting point of the shock leader. So as you can see, I've got the 10-pound line. Now what I'm going to do is measure it. I want around about 25, 23, 24, 25 foot. So 4 of the arm lengths, which I know is around about 6 foot. And a little tiny bit more. Just keep hold of each end. I've got the loop and the one end in either hand. Take the braid, very simply done. Pass the loop of the line through the loop of the braid, and then the end of the shock leader back through the loop. Just pull it through, making sure all the time you've got a nice little bit of room, nothing that the line's going to catch on around you. If your tackle room or your garage isn't that big, do it out in the garden. And you can see there's the loop now, loop to loop. Nice aerodynamic, nice and small, quite a long loop, as I've found that this tends to carry it through the eyes much better. Now what I'm going to do is take the rod over here and holding the main line, I'm just going to reel it through the eyes, and what I'm looking to do is to just have the knot just above the reel, very similar to how we do with our carp rods, our straight lead feeder rods for carp fishing. You see the knot coming up now, and there's the loop to loop. And what I'm going to do is cut that off there, around about there, and what that enables me to do then is when I'm actually going to cast, I have 2 or 3 turns, the feeder's nearer the top, the shock leader's on the reel, and that covers me. That's what's going to give me the security and the extra thickness of line to actually cast those big feeders. Pop the back wind on, bring the rod back over here, and now it's a case of just tying the feeder into the loop. And this can be a little bit fiddly if you've not done it before. I just sit down with an old spool of line and a swivel and just try to practice. So I've got the clip swivel. Now I'm going to show you how to tie this, which obviously the feeder is going to go onto, into a running loop or a fixed loop. So like I say, one thing that I always do, bearing in mind you're going to be fishing heavy feeders, is always pick a good quality swivel. Strong, good quality, reliable, one that actually clips in and is very positive. If you're going to be casting a 3, 4, 5, 6 ounce feeder, you don't want a little tiny swivel that's obviously going to buckle under the weight. So this goes onto the main line and create a nice decent sized loop like so. And this is going to formulate, you want to have around about 1 foot. That's what you're looking to do, because I'm going to tie a little twizzled loop in amongst this big loop. So just create the loop. If you just wet the line and drop the swivel through the loop, I'm going to do a 4-turn loop. Again, I want it nice and strong. 2, 3, 4, and you can see now I've got the loop knot actually formulated, and I can actually manipulate this into the exact place that I want it. Just wet that loop, pull it nice and tight, and there you go. Trim that loop off, and what you're left with is your swivel actually running in quite a large loop. So you got there, like I said, around about a foot long. That's what I aim to do. And then just take the swivel up. You can see now that the swivel's actually caught in there, and this is very important on a lot of river rigs. But the next step, just keep the line nice and tight, and then a 2-turn loop around about 4 inches up. And what I'm looking to do is have the big loop that the feeder's running in around about 6-7 inches long, and that feeder now is trapped, and this is where your hook length's going to go. Then the next thing, you've got the swivel in between the 2 knots. You can see it sliding there. Then you're left with a big loop, obviously, to put your hook length on. And in this, I'm going to tie a number of smaller loops, a little bit like the twizzled loop. And what this will do is just hold my hook length away from the feeder a little bit. You can see there I've tied 2 small knots, and it acts almost like a boom. You can see it becomes quite rigid, and it just enables the hook length to be held away from the feeder a tiny bit. Pull that nice and tight. You can see there when the feeder comes down, the actual line now, with a few little knots in, a few little loops tied in, actually acts as a bit of a boom and holds it away. So that's how to tie the loop method on the feeder. And the best thing about this rig, and the reason it works so well, is when you're actually fishing on a river, especially one that's flowing hard, you want the fish to hook themselves. Now if this was totally free running, it would just run up and down, and the fish are virtually pulling just on the rod tip. But with this, as the fish pulls and it's actually in the loop, and the weight of the big feeder, it'll actually dislodge the feeder, and that's when you get that nice drop back, especially when you're fishing for decent sized fish. And that's where the fish actually hooks itself. And that's the main reason a lot of people use this running loop rig. So the feeder's running, it's moving a little bit, but it actually stops on the knot. And when the fish pull, especially a decent skimmer or a bream in the river, and they hit that knot, they dislodge the feeder, and that's when you get that nice drop back. It's quite a time consuming knot to tie. Does take a little bit of practice. Get an old spool of line, sit down in your garage or your tackle room or even your front room, and just practice that knot. You do want it around about a foot long, 6-7 inches, and then a nice little twizzled loop coming off for your hook length. Nice and simple once you actually get to learn how to tie it right. So that's the heavier rod all made up for Sunday. Got the 10-pound shock leader, 010 braid, and I've got peace of mind now. If I get to the river, it's up, coloured, a little bit of flowing. I've got the rod, I've got the reel, and I've got the setup to combat the conditions. There's nothing worse than getting to a venue and either being overgunned or undergunned. You do need a few different rods with you. Every eventuality can be covered then. So that's the setup for the heavy rod. As far as the actual running loop's concerned, that's the same on all the rods. It might be a little bit lighter on the shorter rods. Like I say, still 010 braid, coming down to the 8-pound shock leader, just fine down a little bit. You'll probably see on Sunday that if we don't get any rain, it's more or less like fishing a lake. It will be moving through a little bit, but only very still. We'll be fishing with the rod down and fishing it very much like it's a lake. However, like I've said, if we do get that little bit of rainfall and the river does come up, we've got the tools to deal with it. Now I think it's best to have a look at the feeders that we will be using on Sunday's match. Well, now I want to talk to you about the feeders, and it is a real important decision as to what feeder you're going to use. Obviously, when you're talking about rivers, a bit like the rods, you do need a big variety of different weights for different types. Talking about Sunday, if the river is low and the river is normal, it's going to be probably a good 8 to 12 foot deep, depending on exactly where we draw. Not a lot of flow. So what I do want to do is create a little bit of a column of bait that will just drift down my peg, maybe pull a few fish. And I'll probably start, if the river's normal, using the normal Drennan cage feeders. Some of these, this is out of my river selection, so I have put a little bit more weight on the feeders, various different sizes, various different shapes. But obviously what that is going to do is it hits the water, a little bit of the ground bait, an odd loose offering is going to come out and just trundle down the peg and hopefully draw a few fish. This is a feeder I'm going to use, like I say, if the river is low and clear. Like I've already stated, slightly shorter rod, fish it more like it's an actual lake. Because in my mind, I'm just thinking, if the river's low and clear, probably fishing for a few less fish, a little bit less weight to actually win the match. If I do catch a decent fish, that's a bonus. But what I don't want to do is sit there biteless, fishing for big fish, when a few pound of little fish might even get you through on the day. So like I say, they're the feeders that I'm going to be using if the venue is normal, low, clear, and not a lot of flow. If there's a little bit more flow than I actually think, then I'll obviously step up to the Drennan feeders. These are the extra large ground bait feeders. They come in a variety of different sizes. You can see that they do small ones. The beauty with these is they actually do them in decent leads, 40, 50 grams, and it is actually perfect. There's not many feeders nowadays that you can actually buy with that much lead on. A lot of them come with a lot less lead, and you've actually got to add them yourself. But the Drennan extra large ground bait ones actually come with a decent amount, either 20, 30, 40 or even 50 grams of lead. And it really is a fantastic range of feeders. Going on, the rod that you saw me prepare earlier, the long rod, this is if it's really up and bombing through. Obviously then you need specialist gear, not just the rod and reel, but what you're actually going to put on the end of the feeder. And you can see I've got a selection of feeders from Cage Feeders here, 90 grams, right the way up, 100 grams, 80 grams, a massive selection. Like I say, there's a 100 gram feeder there. Going right the way up to feeders that are in excess of 4 ounces. Like I say, this is a selection of feeders that I've accumulated over the years, just kept in a bag in my tackle room. And for these weekends that come along, not that often for me, faced with 2 big river matches, Sunday in particular, it's a fantastic array of things to have at your disposal. Just keep them over the years, they don't rot, they don't go to waste, just keep them in a bag, and when you need them, it really is good that you can just go to a bag that's full of gear that's actually suited. I can just take that bag with me. I know I've got feeders for every eventuality, and that's absolutely perfect for me. I've got a few different feeders here. There's a 2.5 ounce one there, can get a little bit more bait in, but I do tend to prefer, if the river's up and really bombing, still the cage feeder. And the reason for this is quite simple. Any sort of drag on the rod or drag on the line that you can eliminate is obviously better. When that feeder's on the bottom and empty, the water's going to pass through it. If you can imagine that feeder was on the bottom, the water's actually going to push the feeder and create your feeder to roll. When you're fishing for these big fish, you don't really want that. You want a nice stationary bait, you want to cast out, create a little bit of an area and sit and wait for those odd bites. So these will be the feeders that I'll probably be using Sunday if the water is up and bombing through. The only other thing that I've got an array, I used to call them dead cows, obviously because of the way that they sit, an array of different size weights that can be added onto the feeders at any times. You can see the prongs, they just push into the holes of the feeders. This way I can tailor make a feeder as I'm fishing for the actual flow. Going to be a little bit difficult to do that on Saturday where I'm going on the tidal trend, as the flow does vary depending on the tide. But as far as Sunday's concerned, even if the river is up, it should be quite a constant flow, and once you get the feeder right and holding, then obviously it should be right. But again, a little selection of those in the bag just in case I need any kind of variation or a size of feeder that I haven't got. What is nice on all these feeders, you can either cut the holes out and actually clip the weights on. You can see most of the bigger feeders that I've actually got weights on up to 4 ounces. and this will really hold in a lot of the flow. Very rarely you need much heavier than 4 ounces. Sometimes you do. I've got the kit with me. I can custom make a feeder there and then on the bank for anything that I need. That's the variation of feeders that I've got. As far as the match on Sunday is concerned, there's no loose feeding, there's no throwing bait, there's no catapulting bait. It's purely feeder fishing. You're not even allowed to fish with a straight lead. So every bit of bait will go through the feeder. If I did want to introduce a lot of bait, I've got big feeders like this that I can actually introduce a volume of bait with, right the way up to the legal size feeder for the Feeder World Champs, which is quite a big feeder. This is the biggest feeder that you're actually allowed to use on these matches, and that's 7 centimeters by 5. But as you can imagine, with a decent sized feeder rod, you can get a lot of bait in there. Do I think it's going to be like that Sunday? Not for me. If the river's low and clear, then definitely I'll be on the back foot, putting a little bit of dark ground bait in, probably fishing redworms or dendrobinas on the hook, double maggot or 2 or 3 pinkies. Just fishing for a few bites and seeing what's going to happen. If I get there and I'm faced with the situation of the river being up, coloured, then I want to put some bait in, and that's where this feeder could well come into play. But again, that's why you've got to go prepared. You've got to go with all the gear and then make your mind up when you see the river in the morning. One of the most important parts is obviously hook and hook length choice. And then, like we know that there's a multitude of different hooks and line on the market. But again, as with all my fishing, I like to stick to the ones that I've got the utmost confidence in. One of my favourite river hooks for feeder fishing, or for a lot of different fishing, is a Drennan Wide Gape. It really is a fantastic hook. It's sort of a medium hook, double maggot, 2 little bits of a worm. When the fishing's difficult, which it could well be on Sunday, this will probably be my #1 choice of hook. Obviously there's a few different occasions. If we're using a big feeder, fishing for big fish, then the Gamma Powers, the barbed version, size 12, size 14, absolutely fantastic hook. This is a hook to put on when you know that what you're targeting is going to pull a bit back. It's never going to let you down. Don't really blunt that easy at all. Fantastic for a multitude of different baits, 2 or 3 casters, worms, maggots. Absolutely fantastic hook for when the fishing is good or you're fishing for a few big fish. If I am confronted with a barbel peg, size 12, barbed Kamasan animal hooks, spade ends again, these are absolutely fantastic for big fish. Can't bend them, again, just not going to let you down. And when you hook these barbel on these rivers, it is amazing just how hard they actually pull. Going on to the lines, obviously again, if it's going to be low and clear on Sunday, probably be using fluorocarbon, 012, 014. The Drennan one and the Gamakatsu ones are my 2 favourites at the moment. I haven't got the Gamakatsu one in any less than 014 at the moment, but the Drennan Suplex in 012 and 013 is absolutely bang on. Tie's very nice. If the water's going to be clear on the river, which it could well be on Sunday, then obviously fluorocarbon might just get you an odd extra bite from those bigger fish. As far as the heavier hook lengths are concerned, I like to use the Daiwa Match Winner. Again, a little bit of a strange choice, but because you're in and out, it's quite a rough fishing, quite a physical fishing. You need a hard wearing line, and Match Winner obviously gives me that little edge. Probably, if it's big feeders, I won't be using fluorocarbon. The Match Winner in 5 and 6 pound will be absolutely perfect. Going on to the hook lengths, you can see here, got 50 centimetre hook lengths. If Sunday the river's quite low and clear, this will be perfect. B560s again, which is another hook I've got here. If you're fishing pieces of worm on a very hard day, or double maggot, or even double pinky, fantastic hook for skimmers, roach, perch. Probably my #1 choice for when it's really low. The Wide Gapes are fantastic too. If it's going to be a little bit harder, the B560s. I've got a multitude of hook lengths here, all tied to fluorocarbon, some tied to Drennan double strength, some tied to the Daiwa Match Winner. But they're all ready to go, like I say, at 50 centimetres, which is one of my favourite lengths to fish with on a normal river. Like I say, that's them. Going on to, if we're going to be fishing with the big feeders, bigger hooks, like I've already said, I've got the Drennan Animals, the Super Spades. Again, a very good, very, very strong hook. Going right the way on to the Drennan Wide Gapes, 018. You'll notice, and this is a fantastic little tip here, 5.5 foot hook length. On a lot of rivers, when you're fishing big feeders, long hook lengths can definitely get you more bites, especially when you're fishing for quality fish like barbel, skimmers, bream, and maybe an odd chub. But the one advantage you've got, you'll see with all my hook lengths here, I've got some wide gapes 12 to 018, wide gapes 14 to 016, 018, and again I've got some to a heavier fluorocarbon for if the water's quite clear. But you'll notice on all of them that they're all tied to 5.5 foot. And this is quite simple. It's probably the longest hook length I'm going to use at 5.5 foot. If I want to use shorter, I can always cut them down. So all my river feeder hook lengths are all tied to 5.5 foot. That way, like I say, if I want a 4 foot or a 4.5 foot or a 2 foot, I've got the hook lengths done, I've got the hooks tied. It's just a case of cutting them down to the desired, obviously the desired length. If you do make them shorter than 5.5 foot, obviously it cuts down the variation in length of hook length. And again, that just brings me on to something else. When you're talking about hook lengths, yes, hooks are important, line's important, but the actual length of your hook length is very, very important. What I tend to do on these rivers, and what I probably do Sunday, is start off on quite a short hook length. If the fishing's good, the fish will be coming to the feeder. I want my hook bait quite close to the feeder. 50 centimetres is the perfect starting length. As the fishing gets harder and I want to catch fish on the drop, catch fish that are away from the feeder, I'll go on to a slightly longer hook length. This is something that I do think about a lot. And definitely when the fishing gets a lot harder, especially when you're fishing for an odd quality fish, a 4, 5, 5.5 foot hook length can definitely get you some more bites. When you're in your room and you're preparing a few hook lengths for these feeder fishing days on rivers, definitely prepare them. I just prepare them at arm's length. That way I know it's 5.5 to 6 foot. And I know that if I want a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 foot hook length, I've got them all there ready. Now I want to talk to you about the bait that I'm going to be taking on Sunday's event. Obviously it's feeder only, so that cuts down on the amount of bait I actually need to take. You're not allowed to throw any bait, you're not allowed to catapult any bait. Every bit of bait introduced has to go in via the feeder. So obviously that cuts down on taking a lot of casters to loose feed, which can obviously work sometimes on the Avon. The bait I'm going to take to start with, a pint of dead red maggots. These will go through the feeder. Fantastic hook bait, especially if I'm on a few bream and skimmers. 2 or 3 dead red maggots. These will probably come more into play if the river's up with a little bit of colour. So definitely won't go without them. A little bit of change bait. I've got half a pint of live maggots. Again, these will be opened in the morning. They're going straight in my fridge now. Open them in the morning, they'll come round within a matter of minutes. I've got some yellow, white, even some fluorescent ones. And this will come more into play if I'm just looking to catch an odd small fish, maybe even an odd small chub. The yellow maggots and the fluorescent ones in particular quite often get you a few bites when bites are very, very hard to come by. Coming down, got a quarter of a pint of mixed pinkies. Again, I'm not going to look to feed any of these. Fluorescent pinkies in particular, fantastic hook bait. Especially 2 bits of worm and a fluorescent pinky if you've got a few skimmers in the area. Absolutely fantastic bait. That'll definitely come into play Sunday at some time. If we're on a few skimmers at the start, maybe at the start. If we're looking to winkle out an odd small fish because we've had a reasonable start with some other fish, then definitely a small piece of worm and a fluorescent pinky, maybe even 2 or 3 fluorescent pinkies on the hook. Fantastic bait just to get a few bites on. The casters, obviously, going to take a couple of pints of casters. Normally, on the Avon, I'd take 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 pints if it's up and bombing through, because I'd be introducing bait by hand or even catapulting bait. Obviously, because it's only feeder, 2 pints will be more than enough. I've got a kilo of dendrobinas. Obviously, these will be cut up very fine, not so fine if it's up and going and I'm fishing for some big fish. But like I say, dendrobinas, kilo should be more than enough. The only other thing to add to this, I've got some fresh hemp being cooked for me today. So that'll obviously come into play. And also a friend of mine is bringing me some red worms on the morning, which is a fantastic hook bait. But that's something we can have a look at on the bank. Now on to ground bait, which is a real important choice. For me, for bream, brown crumb is one of the #1 additives. Here at Gold Valley we do our own brown crumb, medium brown crumb. It's good quality, nicely ground, quite fine for medium, but it's full of food, and that's what these big fish on these rivers want. The main body of my mix will be Old Ghost Bream. Again, it's got a slight twang of fish meal, but not too much. A lot of soya in it, fantastic for bream. Quite sticky, but it explodes out the feeder. It's quite a fluffy textured mix. Mix 50-50 with brown crumb. One other thing I am going to take is some soil. Now this is if the river's up and really bombing through, and I want to add a little bit of weight to my feeder, a little bit of weight to my ground bait. I'll put a small percentage of this, maybe 20-30% if it's really ripping through. So that'll be in the van. When I've had a little look at the river, probably stay in the van if the river's normal. The only other thing I will be doing to the ground bait is darkening it off with a dye. You can see here I've just got a powdered black dye. I will be mixing the ground bait up the night before, so when we arrive on the bank it will be mixed. I just want it nice and wet, having been mixed up for a few hours. So late the night before I'll add a little bit of black colour into it just to turn it that black colour. What I will be doing though, however, if the river is up and coloured, I'll be taking a little bit of extra ground bait, because if it's up and chocolate I don't want to use black ground bait. If the river's low and clear, then I'll use black ground bait. If I do get there and I'm faced with the situation that the river's up, coloured and going a bit, I'll be prepared just to mix a little bit more ground bait up, so I've got a nice lighter mix. But as far as the ground bait's concerned, I want to get it mixed up the night before. Cuts down on time, bearing in mind we've got long walks, got quite a bit of gear to set up. It could be quite hard to get comfortable. Need to designate a lot of time for these. And if I can mix my ground bait the night before, save a little bit of time, and the ground bait's nice and fine and prepared perfectly, it's all good. So that's the bait I'm taking. Obviously I'll have some fresh hemp cooked come the day, getting some red worms off a friend of mine, and then it's all good to go. The good thing is in these feeder matches you don't need a pile of bait, because you can't introduce anything by hand, you can't loose feed anything, everything goes through the feeder. I've got a few little change baits when I do get the red worms, coupled with the fluorescent maggots, yellow maggots, the fluorescent pinkies, maybe even a caster or two on the hook. It really is going to be ringing the changes, especially if we're catching a few fish. So that's the ground bait and bait I'll be taking for this Sunday's match. Well, there you go. You've seen the rods, you've seen the reels, you've seen the setup. I've talked you through the feeders, everything that we're going to be using on Sunday, right down to the bait. Like I say, the bait's away in the fridge, all ready to go. The only thing really to do with the bait is to get my fresh hemp, the red worms off my friend, and to prepare the ground bait the night before. When I do prepare the ground bait the night before, bearing in mind it is the summer, it's quite warm, I'll be placing it into a black bag, and that also will be placed in the fridge to stop it going off at all, stop any bad smells coming. That way it'll be nice and fresh when I get it out in the morning. As far as the river's concerned, there is a few things to talk you through. Little things that you do need. Obviously rod rests are important. Maybe not on Sunday, but on a lot of rivers you need to get the rod high. So a nice long bank stick or a nice long feeder arm coming off of your box. Me personally, I use a feeder arm coming off my box if I do need to get the rod high, or just a bank stick with a rod rest on if the rod's low. If I can get my box in, which you can on some pegs, you can't on some, then obviously an attachment off my box. But be prepared. Things like waders, nice platform, a platform barrow so you can actually push your gear, and be prepared to cut your gear down. What's fantastic for me about matches like Sunday is I don't need to take my poles, I don't need to take the rollers, the rigs, everything can be fined down and cut down. Coupled with the fact that you could be faced with a very long walk on some of these rivers, and not the most comfortablest walk over some fields, maybe even a stile or two. You do need to cut your gear down. We're not going to be taking a amount of bait, which we could do normally maybe. A lot of matches on the Avon, especially when it's been up and coloured, I've balled it with a vast amount of ground bait to try and attract the fish. That can't happen because you can't do it. Things like waders, nice long rod rests, trolleys and cutting your gear down, it all plays a massive, massive part. Just put 2 or 3 other bags of ground bait in your car or in your van, so that when you get to the venue, if the ground bait that you've prepared isn't quite right in your mind, you can tweak it or maybe even change it. If you don't bring it with you, obviously you haven't got that option. For Sunday's match I will be putting 3 or 4 bags of extra ground bait in the van, slightly different colour, normal Old Ghost Bream, brown crumb that hasn't been dyed, and like I say, if I get there and it's up and coloured and I don't want to use a black ground bait, then I can prepare it. Having looked at the weather forecast, which is another very, very important thing, it can definitely give you the heads up on the conditions, especially on rivers as far as rainfall is concerned. Having looked at it, yes, we're in for a little bit of rain on Friday. Saturday, but not too much. It's going to be overcast. Could be a few bream caught, but like I say, if the river's not up and coloured, I don't think the weights will be massive. Hopefully, you know, draw near a few fish, maybe even near an end, will be fantastic and we can catch a few fish. Being prepared, looking at the weather forecast that can give you the heads up. I think with a little bit of rain we got coming, the ground's ever so dry. We haven't had a lot of rain at the moment at all, and I think most of the rainfall will just go straight into the ground and not really affect the river. But it's little things like that that you've got to keep your eye on, can just give you that little bit of advantage, not only when you're preparing your tackle, but when you're preparing your bait. You've seen the variation in the hooks, the hook lengths, the bait, everything. We're pretty well prepared. I'm quite happy in my head that I've prepared everything, I've got everything I need. So I'll see you on the bank on Sunday.
Oh.
Well, I had a big fish on the pike. Well, we've just finished the match here on peg 3 on Fries on the Bristol Avon. I've had £6.13. It's normally a good area for bream. It's quite a famous peg, the culvert peg, but nobody in the whole section has had a bream or a skimmer. It's been very difficult. Started on a ground bait feeder, like we spoke in the tackle room. Had a few bites immediately, a few little roach, a few little dace, odd little chub and some perch, and that just seemed to peter out. Expecting to catch some skimmers and some bream late on, and it just hasn't happened. With about 2 hours to go, I actually switched to a maggot feeder, put chopworm and casters in it. I've still got the rod here. You can see just the 30-gram Camasan black cap. Got the holes cut out so the worms and the casters can just get out quite easy. And I was casting it downstream towards a bush that was on the far bank, and I have caught probably 3.5 pound of perch, one little tiny chub there as well. Did feel it was probably the best line, and if I'd have done it all day, only £7.10 I think's won the section, so I'm really close. But if I came back here tomorrow, I'd definitely still have to have a go for bream, because they are in here and I just don't think they've fed, whether it's because it was a big tide. We've been on the tidal bit here today. Whether it's because it was a big tide and it's just pushed the fish back and they've just not really had a go or what, I'm not really sure. But like I say, there are plenty of bream in that through. One guy's had a £4 chub. He's had about £6 as well. So like I say, maybe switching to the chopworm feeder a little bit earlier, but hindsight in fishing is a wonderful thing. Obviously, like I say, if I came back, the ground bait feed is definitely your main attack on a feeder only match. Maybe if I'd have fished a chopworm feeder all match, possibly could have won the section. It's very hard to say, but if bream had fed, it definitely wouldn't have been the right method. So I'm quite happy with the way I went about the match. Like I say, Bristol Avon, it's a fantastic place, and I do think today it would have been quite good on a float. There's a bit of flow at 13, 14 metres, but being feeder only, obviously you are quite restricted. It's not that wide here at Fries, but again there's quite a bit of depth. The tow was coming in and then it topped at about 11, half 11, and then it started to go out. Again, 30 grams was more than enough to hold. But like I say, just a lack of big fish. I think there's been some bream caught on one of the other sections. But all in all, this bit at Fries, it's fished disappointingly bad really. Lack of big fish, lack of bream, lack of skimmers. But like I say, I think £7.10's won the section. So it's been quite fair, that's one thing you can say. A lot of people have had between £4 and £6. So it has been quite fair. Maybe not reading the conditions, expecting bream to catch. When I drew my peg, a lot of people said it's a fantastic peg, you can win the match, you're going to catch some bream. You tend to get carried away a little bit. Halfway through, I thought I've established my ground bait feeder peg. I'm now going to leave that, rest it, and hopefully wait for some bream to turn up later. Started on the maggot feeder, chopworm feeder down my peg, and did start to get a few, and kept having to look back where I was fishing for bream, just didn't have any bites. So I think it was the right decision to do. Maybe if I'd have done it all match, you never know. Maybe I could have won the section and qualified for the final. But like I've already said, hindsight's a fantastic thing. One little tip when you do fish a tidal river and the tide's coming in, when it stops, normally if you're on some big fish like bream and skimmers, they do top. When I used to fish the Ada a lot in the Yarran, and obviously the tidal Trent I've fished, when you're near bream or on bream, they definitely seem to top. And I was quite concerned here when it actually topped and it stayed still, that there was no decent fish rising. Maybe I should have picked up on that, drawn a bit more on my experience, but you can never tell 100%, and I was ultra confident here of catching some bream. But like I say, that's just another little tip to keep under your hat. The rigs that we prepared in the tackle room have all worked perfectly and tangle free. I know we've not caught a massive weight of fish today, but £6.15 on a hard day to me is real good fishing. It's a sense of achievement to catch that out of a hard river. So like I say, I hope that some of the rigs I've showed you and the techniques stand you in good stead for the next time you visit a river like the Bristol Avon.